Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. Welcome. I'm Larissa. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. So we're going to be talking about nutrition and childhood nutrition today. I am a registered and licensed dietitian. I'm also an internationally board certified lactation consultant. My passion is nutrition with children. So I love to be able to talk about nutrition in any sort of way, especially with these tiny little tummies that we are feeding. If you have any questions throughout this, you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask those questions. We'll also have time at the end to answer any questions that may come up. And you can also put questions in the chat box and I can see them and I can answer them as they come through. So let's get started. As I mentioned, I'm a registered dietitian. I'm also a doctor of health sciences. Food and nutrition, maternal and child health is really my passion. And childhood really is such an important time of rapid growth, rapid development. These children are growing so fast and they have special needs for nutrition in what they eat. So starting in early childhood, this is when a lot of times kids want to assert their own independence. They want to, show some control over what's going on in their lives. And they often do that with food and with what they eat. When things are rapidly changing and lots of stuff is going on and everything seems new every day because they're learning so many new things, food is often a source of comfort. It's often the source of some familiarity. And so you may also notice this is the time when kids may want to eat the same thing every day, all the time. They want the same pancakes for breakfast every day, the same mac and cheese for every lunch, and the same, hot dog for every dinner. The good news with that is that it's usually a temporary stage, and it's usually a source of, it's because it's comfort, it's routine, it's familiar to them. But this also becomes a time when sometimes you may notice picky eaters start to develop. I mean, I know even with my own children, when they were babies, I could give them anything and they would eat anything and be so adventurous. I could give them avocado and sweet potatoes and whatever, and they would eat it. And then as soon as they got to sort of that toddlerhood, early school years age, that's when suddenly they're like, I don't like it. I don't want it. It's like, you just ate it 6 months ago and loved it, and now you don't love it. And it's really just a developmental stage that usually passes within, 6 months to a year, depending on the child, but totally normal. So also when it comes to toddlers and preschoolers, early school year, they will go through growth spurts. Physical growth spurts, developmental growth spurts, and their appetites can often go through these growth spurts as well. And so there may be spurts where some days they want to eat everything in sight, and then other days they may not want to eat so much at all. And that's fine. Just look at things as the big picture, where it's okay if some days they have less of an appetite and other days they have more of an appetite, just like we do as adults too. Some days we may want to just snack all day, and other days we may be able to eat big, huge meals. So children are the same way with that. During this stage of toddlerhood, preschool, early school years, there's a couple nutrients that are really important that we want to make sure our children are getting. One of those is calcium. Calcium is the nutrient that's responsible for growth of bones and teeth and, help make sure they have nice, strong bones. And because their bodies are growing so fast and their bones are growing so fast and constantly making new bone material so that they can grow bigger and taller, we need to replenish a lot of the calcium. So calcium comes from several different sources. The main source that we often think about is calcium from dairy products, so things like milk, cheese, yogurt, but also non-dairy milks if maybe you don't do milk or your child has lactose intolerance or a milk allergy. Things like almond milk and soy milk, oat milk, they're often fortified with calcium now, so they're usually fine. Just check the food label to see if there's calcium in it. Other non-dairy sources are things like sardines. I don't know how many kids like sardines, but it's a great calcium source. Calcium fortified cereals, breads, orange juice is often fortified with calcium too. So there are options if your child doesn't eat dairy or you don't eat dairy and don't include it in their diets. There are some other sources for calcium. Another nutrient that's important for children that are rapidly growing is fiber. So fiber is protective against heart disease, but it's also really important for children because it helps with prevention of constipation, which can sometimes be an issue for young children. Calcium sources that are best to get from are things from whole fruits and vegetables, whole grain breads, rices, pasta, brown rice, whole grain pastas, and things like that. Sometimes I get asked, how do I get my children to eat more fruits and vegetables? And vegetables in particular, sometimes kids are more often, they'll gravitate to fruit more often than they will to vegetables because fruits are sweeter. And so we have a natural sort of inclination to go towards sweet things. The good news is that a lot of the nutrients that are present in vegetables are also present in fruit. So if your child absolutely hates vegetables, will not eat vegetables, but they will eat fruit, you can rest assured that they probably are meeting their nutrient needs for a lot of different nutrients, and certainly fiber is one of them. And eventually you can add back in some more of those vegetables. But offering vegetables in different textures is sometimes helpful. Sometimes kids will really gravitate towards a certain texture rather than others. If they don't like cooked carrots, try raw carrots, try raw baby carrots. Sometimes cooked foods have more of a soft, mushy, even slimy texture that's not popular with children, but the raw vegetables will have a crunchier texture that may be more appealing to them. You can also get kids to eat vegetables sometimes by adding something interactive, like a dip, like a low-fat ranch dressing, or a hummus, or even ketchup. I know ketchup is sometimes like, oh, I can't, that's not so healthy for me. And sure, it does have some sugar in it, but they're not eating a whole bowl of ketchup, hopefully. Although my son, if I give him ketchup, he will eat his French fries and then he'll eat his ketchup with a spoon, which grosses me out because I don't like ketchup at all. But obviously ketchup is a very popular item. And if that gets your kids to eat more vegetables by dipping it in it, then by all means. The benefits of them getting the vegetables outweighs any of the risks, or not benefits, I should say. There's no risk with ketchup as far as I know. But any of the extra sugar that may come from that ketchup in there. So offer your vegetables in different forms and get them involved, get them to maybe try something that they haven't tried before. Make it a fun adventure, a fun game. Like, hey, we're going to try this today. They can throw things into bowls and help stir. The little ones can definitely help with the stirring and the tossing things in the bowl. So they feel like they're part of the process. They're part of the meal. And that will sometimes help kids be more adventurous. But children also model your behavior. So if you're not an adventurous eater, or you make, facial expressions or body expressions around certain foods that you don't like, they're going to see that and they're going to mirror it. So try to, really broaden your own horizons if you feel like you also are not a very adventurous eater, or there's a lot of foods that you don't tend to like or tend to cook, because they will, mimic what they see from their parents too. I wrote, a couple articles in peer-reviewed journals about the importance of eating together as a family. There's a lot of research out there about how beneficial it is to sit down as a family and eat a meal and eat dinner. Part of it is it's eliminating other distractions that may be going on around you. So if you're normally eating in front of the TV or in front of the computer, or you let your kids, sit in front of the iPad and eat, they may be, number one, missing a lot of cues, their own hunger cues for that matter, and you don't get to enjoy your food as much because you're not focused on it. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book, French Women Don't Get Fat. And the principle behind it is that, French food often can be very high in fat and creamy and lots of carbs and lots of cheeses and custards and things like that tend to be pretty high caloric foods. And obviously this is a very generalization, this book, but the premise is, how do the French eat all these really rich foods that are high in calories and not gain all this weight? And the idea behind it is because they're focusing on their food when they eat it. And mealtime is a process where they're sitting and they're enjoying their meal. They can have smaller quantities. They're paying attention to what they're eating. And so as a family, it's important, especially for children too, to really focus on their foods that they're eating, and that it is part of a process, is part of the day. The other part of eating together as a family, the importance of it is because it gives you an opportunity to talk about what you're eating. It gives you an opportunity to talk about making healthy food choices and portion sizes and seeing how things should be put together on a plate. And part of this research shows that as children get older into their teenage years and even into adulthood, they tend to weigh less than children that never ate together as a family. Because these children were able to understand how to build a plate, a healthy plate, portion control, enjoying their foods. So, if you have the opportunity to eat together as a family, I highly recommend it. So now, we've talked a little bit about the toddlerhood, moving into some older children, maybe, young elementary school into through elementary school, early middle school. This is sometimes when now peer pressure comes in. Could be positive, could be negative. It really depends. For some children that may be picky eaters and are nervous to try new foods, eating together at lunchtime with their friends at school can be a benefit because now they may see that, their friend Bob is eating peas and he was afraid to eat peas, but Bob likes them. Bob's my friend. Maybe I'll like them too. So sometimes that helps, or even just kind of sharing food. I traded this for this because I wanted to try it. So sometimes that actually helps get children to be a little bit more adventurous with eating. But at the same time, it also, can sometimes pose problems eating in the school setting, especially if they're buying lunch where they have more control over what they're eating. As parents, generally, our role with food is to choose what they eat and when they eat it. We're usually the ones that are doing the shopping and the cooking and the meal prep and things like that. And we usually set the meal times. Dinner's at this time during the day. Breakfast is at this time during the day. The children's role is to decide which of those foods they want to eat and how much of it they want to eat. So when they're in school and now away from the parental guidance of saying, you have to eat this, you have to eat this, you have to eat this, now, especially if they're buying lunch, they can pick and choose what they want. So most school districts in the United States do have a set of guidelines that meals provided by the school have to have a certain amount of nutrients in there. The thing with that is that there's often a variety. So yes, they have to have a certain number of vegetables offered, a certain number of fruit offered, certain amount of protein offered. So maybe the picture perfect meal that meets all the nutritional guidelines is baked chicken with a side of broccoli and apple slices. But they always usually have an alternative option, which may be a corn dog and French fries and ice cream. So when children are offered these choices, what may they choose? Now they have that freedom and control over choosing what they want. So one way to help with this issue is to discuss beforehand with your child what would be healthy options to choose when they're at school. Will they do it all the time? Probably not. But if that idea is in their head, they are more likely to do it than if it wasn't discussed beforehand and it wasn't in their head. Most schools will have their school lunches either emailed out the week beforehand or available on their websites. So you can find what is going to be served in school ahead of time. So something to take a peek at and to look at and discuss with your children. It does give you an opportunity to talk to your kids about what are healthy food choices too. It's important not to force food on children and force feed. It can really develop some behavioral issues and some anxiety around food. That clean plate club that maybe you were part of when you were a child. I know sometimes I was a part of it as a child that, don't get off the table, up from the table until you finished your plate, or no dessert if you didn't eat this. So that can sometimes cause anxiety if they're forced to eat something. When you're offering a new food that you're not quite sure your child will eat, offer it in the presence of a food that they do like and that they do eat. And sometimes it takes up to 10 to 15 exposures of one food for a child to decide they even want to try it or let alone like it. And as we get older, our taste buds change. I'm sure there's foods that you hated as a child that maybe you eat now, or vice versa. Maybe you liked it as a child and now you can't stand it. So our taste buds change as we grow older, and same thing with children's. Their taste buds will change over time. So keep re-exposing your children to different foods without forcing them or having the pressure to eat a new food. So have something there that they do like and they can enjoy. Going back to the vegetables, I have a little fruits and vegetables. When we look at a plate, here's a plate for us here. You may have heard about the food pyramid. That's kind of the old way of talking about nutrition, where the food was in pyramid and the base was all the starches, and then there was the fruits and the vegetables and the dairy, and then so, that's great as sort of breaking down the food groups. The problem is it says, eat 6 to 11 servings of grains and cereals and breads during the day. But most people didn't know what exactly was a serving size. Is a serving of pasta a plate full, or is it this much? So the My Plate has now changed, or the My Pyramid has changed to My Plate. And so it looks like this. And this is the same for adult and for children. Of course, children are going to eat on smaller plates than adults, which we need bigger portions. Children always need smaller portions than adults. But the process is the same, where half of it should be fruits and vegetables, a quarter of it should be the starchy foods, and a quarter of it should be the lean protein. And so this is helpful because it gives you more of a visualization of quantities rather than, it needs to be this number of servings, but you don't know how much a serving size is. You can visualize now half of a plate should be fruits and vegetables, and they combine them together. We're half that plate. So again, if your children prefer one type of vegetable over another, or they prefer fruit over vegetables, they can still meet their needs by having sort of that variety there. So you can load that up with some fruits and vegetables, small portion sizes of it, and then a small portion of meat and protein. So this is larger for a child. It would be about half of that amount here of some sort of steak or chicken. Other protein sources are things like eggs and beans, tofu, things of that nature. And then a quarter of it would be your starchy food. That's where your rice, your pasta, your breads would go. And so this helps sort of visualize what the plate should be like. And as your children get to be more familiar with how to build a healthy plate and how to increase different servings of foods, they can use this as an example. As far as milk and dairy products, because of that calcium, we want about 2 to 3 servings of milk or dairy products during the day. Again, if they don't do milk or dairy, they can get calcium from other sources, and they would just want to increase those other sources to make sure that they are meeting their nutrient needs for that. And as children start to get a bit older from even that into later elementary school, middle school, maybe even starting into those preteen stages, that's when their taste may change even more. Now they may start restricting foods, whereas before they may have had a lot more access to, sugary, high-fat foods. Now they may start getting to more issues with body appearance. Maybe they took a class in school where they talked about the food industry and the meat packing industry or something like that, and now they want to be a vegetarian. So, things change as your child gets older as well, and their needs will also continue to change. Adolescence is a time of very rapid growth, and so their nutrient needs are very, very high. And their metabolism is very high. So I'm sure if you have teenagers now, you may know this. I have 3 boys, so I feel like I'm constantly buying food. It is that refrigerator door is always open. And, my oldest son is as skinny as a rail, and he doesn't stop eating because he's almost 13. He's at that age where that metabolism is speeding up so fast, and he constantly needs to replenish his nutrients. So we talk about making healthy choices because he needs to fill up, he needs to feel full, so quantity is there. So how can you get the most bang for your buck? How can you get high quantity of food without being really, really high fat and things like that? And so if you have teenagers or teenagers, you may know that they seem like they can eat anything and not gain any weight at all. But it's an important time also to instill healthy eating habits so that as they get older and their metabolism starts to slow down and they go off to live on their own and, become adults, they're not in that same mentality of I can eat whatever I want and not gain any weight. Because we all know as adults, that does not continue to happen, unfortunately. So talking to your kids a lot as, making those healthy food choices. Going back to, not forcing food on children and, not using that clean plate club, or you can't have dessert until you finish your eating. It's important not to use food as a reward. It tends to be sometimes instinctual to say, if you finish your dinner, you can have ice cream for dessert, or you can have a cookie, or you can have your chocolate, whatever it may be. And what that is telling us, maybe subconsciously, is that the reward is the most important, or the dessert is the most important part of the meal. And so that often leads to the desire to have more high-fat foods or more dessert foods. And of course, we don't want that to be the case. So if you want to offer a cookie with dessert or some M&Ms with the dessert, put it right on the dinner plate. I know that sounds crazy, right? Put it on the dinner plate with the dinner. Will they eat the cookie first? Maybe. They very well may eat that dessert first, but that's okay, because that is teaching them that it's just as important as the other parts of the meal. And then as time goes by and they get a little bit older, it's not nearly as appealing to them. It's just another part of the meal. It isn't the gratification. It's not the reward. It's not the most important part. So they may end up, saving it for last later on. But in the beginning, you absolutely can put that right on the plate with it, and in moderation too. So you're not giving them 10 cookies on their plate where they're going to fill up on that and then not have their dinner. It's one small part of the meal, because everything in moderation, even desserts, have a role in our diets and is part of our eating plans. So you certainly can include it, but don't use it as a reward. The other question I get asked a lot about is, how do I get my kids to eat vegetables? We talked about, the crunchy raw versus the cooked, or might be vice versa. But then the other question I get is, can I hide it in my food? I found a recipe for macaroni and cheese that uses pureed carrots in there, or pureed squash in there, and so they don't know it's in there. Or can I add, grated vegetables to the pancakes where they may not know it's in there? Yeah, you absolutely can. You definitely can do that, and they're going to get the nutrients from it. So that's the benefit of it. The downside of that is that you're not really teaching them the importance of vegetables, because they don't think they're eating vegetables. And there's lots of products out there too. Like there's some pasta that's made with super greens that has more spinach in it. So there's definitely a lot of products out there now that have more fruits and vegetables added into something that traditionally wouldn't be, like pasta. Even some of those, squeezy fruit squeeze things now will have vegetables added to it. So they're all great ways to increase the fruit and vegetable content of your child's diet, but it's not as necessarily teaching them to eat. It's not teaching them to like spinach more. It's not teaching them to like these greens more. So that's the downside of it. It should not take the place of actual whole fruits and vegetables. The other part of it is, it could be beneficial where if you give your child the macaroni and cheese made with pureed carrots and then tell them afterwards, well, guess what? You ate carrots and you liked it. They may say, okay, that's great. Maybe I'll try regular carrots now. I guess I like it. The flip side of that is now they may feel deceived. Like, you tricked me. You put that in there and I didn't want it. And now maybe they won't eat mac and cheese either, because now they're going to think that everything's suspicious. What else are you hiding in there? So general rule of thumb is I usually recommend not hiding vegetables into their foods as their only source of vegetables. Certainly add it in there if you want them to get some extra nutrients, but not with the idea of this is how I'm going to get them to eat their vegetables. So you can, of course, add the vegetables to it, but make sure that you're serving whole vegetables too, so that they are familiar with that broccoli. They are familiar with that spinach, so they know what it looks like. They can taste it and they can enjoy it in its actual normal whole food form. May it happen right overnight? Probably not. It may take that 10 to 12 exposures before they decide they like it or don't like it. But that's okay too, because it's part of the process of learning to eat healthy and enjoying food. Because so many times we hear, and as a dietitian, I also work in a hospital, I'll go into a patient's room and I'll say, hi, I'm the dietitian, I'm here to talk to you about your diet. And they'll say, oh, you're the food police. Oh, and there's always such a negative connotation about diet and eating healthy. Diet's a 4-letter word. And so, trying to program our children from the get-go that eating healthy is fun. It's good. You can have delicious, tasty foods that are healthy, and finding a way that you like it and to prepare it. And sometimes that's all it is a matter of, if your child hates broccoli, it could just be the preparation. Maybe next time, instead of steaming it, you leave it raw, or you add some salad dressing to it, or you add different flavorings and seasonings. Maybe they like a little bit of like low-fat cheese sauce on their broccoli, whatever. Sometimes it's just a preparation issue, and it doesn't have to be such a negative thing to eat healthy during the day. when we do talk about health benefits of foods, talk about it in language that is appropriate for their age. So, with young children, we don't necessarily want to say, eat your carrots, they're healthy for you. The young kid may not get that. Like, what does that even mean? It's healthy for me. But if you say, you should eat your carrots, do you know they're going to help you see better? Even in the dark, you might see better if you eat your carrots. Or older children, you may say, they help with your eyesight, and they also help provide you with fiber so that you can poop better. Kids like talking about poop, so, maybe they'll like that. It's, fun thing. But talk about health benefits in terms that they understand rather than just saying, eat this because it's healthy, or this is healthy for you, this is why you need to eat it. Talk about it in terms that makes it more approachable for them and something that they can understand a little bit better. Keep those healthy foods accessible. Have, the fruits and vegetables prepped, washed, cut up, ready to go in the front of the refrigerator so they don't have to dig for it. If it's things like bananas or apples that are shelf stable, keep them on the countertop and ready to go so they can see where they are and they can grab them easily. Even with fruit, sometimes kids like something to dip their fruit in. So a low-fat yogurt to dip their fruit in, or to make your own fruit dip for fruit. Maybe some peanut butter on it, something, to make it more than just plain fruit for them if they need a little excitement and more variety to it. Find a fun salad dressing that they like for their salads and for their vegetables. A lot of times as adults, we think salad dressings are just evil and they're too high in fat and, we shouldn't be using them, but they're a great way to get kids to eat vegetables. And of course, in moderation, they're totally fine. If that helps them get those vegetables and be familiar with them and comfortable with them and enjoy them, then it's totally fine to do that too. So to wrap up sort of this overview of eating well with kids and choosing well, I'm just going to talk a little bit about portion sizes, because we do hear a lot, we have the plate, but we sometimes don't know what exactly a portion size is. So for the vegetable group, we want at least 3 servings of vegetables per day. And a serving of vegetables is about a half a cup of vegetables. If it's leafy vegetables like salad, lettuce, spinach, things, it's a cup because it's fluffy. So they want at least 3 of those a day. For fruits, you want at least 2 to 4 servings of fruit per day. And it's things like a small piece of fruit, like a small peach. If you have, I don't know about you, where you live, but where I live, a lot of the fruit in the grocery store is gigantic. They are huge. Like some of these apples are humongous. I'm in the South. I'm in South Carolina. So we have peaches and we have gigantic peaches too. So for a kid, it might be a half of a peach or a half of a huge apple. But if you can find small ones, that's fine. Same thing with bananas. About a half a banana is a serving size. It also is things like a half a cup of canned fruit or half a cup of 100% fruit juice. A little note about drinks. Of course, water is the best. Low-fat milk is okay. Be careful with fruit juices. Even 100% fruit juices can have a ton of sugar in it. They're natural sugars. I mean, nobody's injecting apples with sugar on the tree. They just fall off the tree with natural sugar in it, but they have a lot of calories in it. So if you are concerned about your child's weight and them gaining weight too quickly and being a bit overweight, pay attention to what they're drinking. You may be thinking that, fruit juice is fine because it's 100% fruit juice, but it can have a lot of calories. If they're drinking a lot of it during the day, that can provide a lot of unnecessary calories that doesn't have anything else, like as far as fiber and stuff goes. So it's better to aim for the fresh fruit. If you do fruit juice, a half a cup is fine for a serving. You can also dilute it with some water. So if you want them to have more to drink of that with some flavor, half a cup of fruit juice with some water is great. As far as breads and grains go, they need about 6 servings. Older kids need about 11 servings, up to 11 servings per day. And a serving size is things like 1 slice of bread or 1/3 of a cup of cooked pasta. That's the size of about a lemon. Okay, so it's not a huge quantity. So rice and pasta and things like that, about the size of a lemon. Again, it's going to fit in for about 1/4 of a plate. That counts as 1 serving. Also things like a half a cup of unsweetened cereals or, mildly sweetened cereals, not the really high sugared ones. Protein servings is 2 to 3 servings per day, and that's about 2 ounces of lean meat. So it's roughly the size of your palm of your hand of your child. And this stays the same as we get older. So as we need more protein and our hands get bigger, we use that as a tool too. So 2 ounces is about your child's palm of your hand as far as like meats and chicken and fish and things like that go. It also counts as like 1 egg as a serving, or 1 to 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. That counts as a protein serving as well. An ounce of cheese, which is about the size of 4 dice put together. So a little block of cheese like that. And then the dairy, which we mentioned, about 2 to 3 servings of dairy during the day. And that 1 serving counts as 1 cup of low-fat milk. If your child is younger, like between the ages of 1 and 2, whole fat milk is fine. They need that extra fat for those young kids. Or about a half a cup of yogurt, cheese, 1 ounce, same thing, about 4 dice. Cheese counts as a dairy product and a protein product too. So they fit into both of those categories. So that's kind of the overview of nutrition. I wanted to save some time for questions at the end, but really, having your kids eat a rainbow, that's what I tell kids, eat a rainbow, choose things with lots of different colors, usually the more color in it, natural color, not like, not like gummy bear colors, but, lots of different colors with their fruits and their vegetables. Choosing a rainbow, make sure that they're getting all of those different nutrients that they need in their diets. Encouraging the fiber, encouraging physical activity, talking about eating healthy as a family, sitting down and eating together as a family and enjoying food and, not making it a negative time or a negative process at all. So with that, I'd like to open it up. If anybody has any questions, you can unmute yourself or put in your questions in the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer them. So we have a question from Damon who says, hey, they have a 4-year-old child who's a picky eater, loves sugar, simple carbs. Yes, we all have been there. There's some worry about restlessness, distractibility, general, executive functioning issues. Could be protein and iron intake. Could deficiencies in these things cause behavioral issues? Yeah, it could. There definitely is a connection between behavioral issues and foods. Sometimes it's not necessarily what they are not eating, but what they are eating. So simple carbs and sugars have a lot of sugar in it, even just, white bread and things like that, which can cause spikes in energy, which can cause a little bit of restlessness and some hyperactivity that often comes on the other side where there's then a dip down. And so they may crash afterwards. But those spikes, usually with 1 to 2 hours after eating, is when you'll see a noticed increase in activity. The protein sort of buffers those sugars. So even if your child just really likes white bread, which is fine, make sure they're having some protein with it, whether it's some natural peanut butter or something to buffer those sugars so they don't spike up so much. There's also been a little bit of association between like hyperactivity issues and some behavioral issues with some coloring, artificial coloring in foods. So if your child eats a lot of like fruit snacks or gummy things that maybe have some artificial colorings in them, just pay a close attention to that because there may be a connection between the artificial coloring and behavioral issues as well. So great question. What other questions do we have? And you can feel free
Hi, Larissa.
Hi.
So first of all, you had a bunch of helpful tips, so thank you.
Sure.
I wanted to ask about my 7-year-old son. Just like Damon said, he likes sweets and carbs, especially doesn't really eat vegetables and fruits. Although I tried to introduce it to him lots of times, but now I sort of gave up. So my question is, how do I move forward? What should I do? Is there anything that I can, like a formula, like a nutrition formula or gummies or something that I can add like daily?
Yeah, that's a great question. With any type of, if you're worried about your child having any type of deficiency, not getting quite as much as they need to be getting, you can always add a multivitamin, just a daily multivitamin, and they have lots of children's ones in there. That just kind of acts as, just make sure that your ground is covered so that if they, are having days where they're more picky than others or they're not eating everything, at least, they're getting the nutrients. And that gives you a little more wiggle room to play around with different things. Continue offering those vegetables. Offer them with every meal. If you're eating them with your dinner, put them on his plate. He may not touch it, and that's fine, but keep exposing in small quantities. You don't want it to be overwhelming. You don't want him to have a huge plate of broccoli. But 1 or 2 little florets of broccoli on his plate with the things that he does like. And that frequent re-exposure will help him become a little bit more comfortable with it. And again, maybe find a different preparation way. Have him maybe come up with ideas. So at 7 years old, kids are definitely becoming more independent and able to play a role in the food prep, maybe even the food purchasing, have them come to the store with you and, hey, do any of these vegetables look good that we can try? Maybe something that you haven't tried too. Get him really involved in it. And he may feel that he has a sense of control over what he's eating if he's more involved. But try different prep ways, different seasoning ways, and re-exposure. Just keep re-exposing it. Don't expect it to happen necessarily on the first time or even the second time. But that re-exposure will at least make them feel more comfortable and confident with it. And there's just maybe some vegetables that he absolutely won't like, but he will find one that he likes. And then if you find out that all he likes is celery with peanut butter in it, well, cool. Let him eat celery and peanut butter. And then eventually he may add some more, but at least he's getting some of the nutrients that he's getting from one vegetable that you have. I also work with adult patients too. And I know lots of adults where all they will eat is green beans, or all they will eat is peas, and that's the only vegetable that they have in their repertoire. So of course, trying to get them to choose more things is also important. But it's not uncommon for kids to find one vegetable that they've had, they feel confident with it, it's a routine for them, it's a safe food, and continue re-exposing to new foods as well. But let them keep having that one comfort food or that one fruit or vegetable that you find that they like. Great question.
Great, thank you.
What other questions do we have? You can feel free to put it in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask it. I'll be happy to answer from you there too. These are great questions. It's, kids are such a funny age too, where they're constantly changing, especially for young kids. Every day it feels like a different day. And this may be, this isn't just food. This is life with children, especially life with toddlers. I also have a 2-year-old. So I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old and a 2-year-old. So I have a span of ages in my house right now. And even with my 2-year-old, like one day, all he wanted to wear was Superman socks. And this was like for a week straight. I had to find different types of Superman socks. And then suddenly it changed and absolutely did not want to wear Superman socks. So, things change quickly with young children, and the same is true for food. So you kind of have to, roll with the punches a bit, find foods that they like. Don't be surprised if they get on a trend where they want to eat the same food for a week straight. But then as fast as that happens, they may get off that trend and then want another food for a whole week straight. So that's part of being a kid, is them exploring and finding their way with different foods. Christine wants to know what my take is on probiotics. So probiotics, I think, are great. I think they're totally fine for children, especially if your kids maybe have any issues with some like gut health, maybe some constipation or, diarrhea issues that you find just happen quite a bit with kids. So yeah, they absolutely can help with that. They also help with immune function, and they do make children's probiotics. So you can either get the probiotics that are made for children just in sort of gummy form or pill form, whatever you choose. But you can also eat foods that have a lot of natural probiotics in there. So things like yogurts, anything that's kind of fermented, which I don't know how many kids love, sauerkraut or kimchi or, anything like that, or kefir milk. But, yogurt, of course, is a good one. Otherwise, probiotic gummies are fine to use for children if you look for the child ones. But I think they're great as far as gut health and also for immune health for adults as well. But I'm a big fan of probiotics for children. Great questions. You're welcome. Do we have anything else? Okay, well, I thank you all so much for joining me. You can find me on ParentGood if you have any other questions or want to set up an appointment to discuss maybe your child one-on-one. I'll be happy to help you with any of that. But I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today and talk about childhood nutrition. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.